welcome to another episode of the Candace and Elisa Show. Oh, today's headline kind of breaks my heart because it takes me down the road of these very similar scandals still happening in 2021. BBC reported that an aide was fired after a Parliament House sex video scandal in Australia. The woman was fired and she claims that it was actually sexual assault that went on instead of a sexual relationship. And they've come under fire, Lisa, because the female parliamentarian whose office this was taking place in, because this is where the video was taken, said that she felt sorry for the aide. So what do you think about this? Does it not bring back circa 1998?
Ding, ding, ding. I mean, I feel it's such a parallel to the Bill Clinton and Monica Lewinsky situation. And I think what it really evokes in me is the fact that, I mean, let's just take a pause and say, it started in 1995, their affair. Their impeachment was 1998 for Clinton. Nothing's changed, has it? Nothing's changed. We're 20-something years later, and we're still back to square one, same situation. And I just go, Monica Lewinsky, she was 22 when this was happening, which is something that we were discussing, how I actually personally don't know how I would have fared if I were 22 and the president of the United States was coming on to me, I don't know how you feel about that, but I don't know if I would have had the tools to actually set my boundaries straight and look at the life that she's had to lead in front of the media, right?
Yeah. You know what it is for me? I think the biggest issue I have around situations like this is, in this case, it's slightly different because the woman claims, and it's not been substantiated, so I won't call it definitively, but she claims it was sexual assault. She claims that she didn't have a prior relationship to this person and she was assaulted. So it's slightly different to Monica Lewinsky, whereby they had a 2-year running affair and what ended up transpiring. However, for me, what it comes down to is men of power and youth, right? The two for me are it creates very murky waters, because I can tell and I can see why it's intoxicating. Because for me, Bill Clinton was a good-looking man, especially in his prime, right? Like back then, he was a good-looking man. He had like the American people on his side. He was incredibly charming. And I've had the honor of speaking, at seminars with him and listening to him speak. And he's an incredibly charming, charismatic man. And I can see why that would be something that you would get infatuated with, which is what Monica Lewinsky alleged. She said, you know what, like I got attention from one of the most powerful and, good-looking men in the country at that time. And he was showing me attention at 22. And I'd had a crush on him. It started to develop. The more attention he showed me, the more I started to fall for him. And I feel like that happens to a lot of people, right? It's not a popular opinion because somehow society has framed it as, when a man, and this does not matter if it's a high power man or not, when a man is engaged within a relationship, it is the other woman's responsibility to make sure she stays away from him. And it's got nothing to do with the vows he took in front of God. It's got nothing to do with his legal contracts and obligations. It's got to do with this home wrecking, scumbag. And we've got, you know how bad it is? We've got names, like we've got curse words for days, calling women Jezebels and Jolene, as Dolly Parton would like to call it, and other more explicit names.
Yes, no, absolutely. And I think what really gets me is precisely what you're saying is, why do we always place the responsibility, even if it's a man coming in, on the third party coming in? It's almost like, anyone that's in a relationship or married or whatever is a victim of the circumstances of having had an affair. And I'm going, actually, if anything, that person had a greater responsibility because they're the ones that made the commitment to somebody else. So I've always viewed it like, this idea that it's the third person that's got the huge weight. No, first of all, it's at least equal. And certainly what you're saying about Bill Clinton, 100%. And I think the main difference here is the fact that a lot of people have become infatuated with their boss, with whatever, but they've not been in the complete spotlight at 22 of every single newspaper and media outlet around the world, knowing your name for the really, really wrong reason. And I don't know how people reacted in South Africa, but I know that in Mexico, being, I don't know if it was because we're a very Catholic country or what, but she was the worst, right? This woman was the worst person. This woman was a young person at 22. I mean, we painted
with
her the wrong.
bad decisions.
Yeah, exactly.
And
Exactly.
that's, like for me, I think when I sent you that this weekend, where I was like, holy shit, did you know Monica Lewinsky was only 22? Was because now that I'm 29 and I look at the decisions I made between 20 and like teenage into like until I'm pretty sure around 25, 26,
Yes.
when
Yeah.
I started kind of hitting maturity because I was now in the workforce and my brain was, different. But I mean, I look at myself, I dated from the time I was 22, my first relationship. I dated older men. And for me, all of them were powerful, all of them were older, all of them were, but to me, it wasn't that because I had abandonment issues, right? So to me, what I saw was a protector. This man is so powerful, he's so strong, he's going to protect me. And so for me, when I realized the decisions I made, when I realized how manipulated I was, when I realized how everything they said was honestly the God honest truth. Nothing they said, nothing they did was, what it was. Looking back at it with a 29-year-old mind, I look at some of those people and I'm like, holy shit, you took advantage of, and I mean, I was there, I'm not a victim to them at all. But I look at how their power intoxicated me, how their sense of protection, how the world related to them, because it's got so much more to do than just power, right? Because people be like, oh, well, you got payback because you were a gold digger or this digger. I'm like, I didn't care about their money. Genuine to God, I didn't care about their money. What I cared about is that when I walked with them, the people's reception towards them made me feel safe because I was like, okay, you can clearly protect me because people want to protect you. And so I think that it's such a huge psychological thing for women that when you are in a space with someone who's incredibly powerful, you do feel a little safer, right? Because they've got this aura that they can protect you. And so I'm not going to look at her and like, throw stones. Yes, they may not have been like the president. And yes, they may not have been, married or whatever, but they were still intoxicating to me. And so I almost shudder to think that if my life, thank God, like I had the good sense not to go public with him, but if I had gone public with him, how my life would be a completely different story right now. And I always just shudder at that thought, right? Like at like the idea of like being always associated with A, B, or C. Like it makes me sad that now she's defined by that for the rest of her life.
Well, and a couple things come to mind as you were speaking, which is you just said, it's so great that I didn't come to the spotlight or come to light with these relationships because you feel the weight of what that would represent for you and your career. Whereas what would that actually have represented to them? They got a hot young woman. Good job, bravo. You know what I mean? That's so interesting. And then also, I think it's so interesting what you said about wanting that protection, because I think how many of us walk with a void from something from childhood, from some broken relationship, wanting to fill it in that person that we're looking for, right? And how much effort does it actually take to decant and recognize what void you're trying to fill that actually you need to fill yourself before you can actually wholesomely approach someone and not be attaching for the wrong reasons. And here we have such an obvious, obviously I had a complex relationship with my father, so perhaps my first relationships were not that great either in what I was looking for. But in your case also, it's like, it's that literal not having had a dad with you through your formative years and having that gap, in a way. So it would make so much sense. How can we expect someone at 22 years old to have come to that realization when nobody talks about it, right? Done the work and then not got themselves into this situation. When I say got themselves in this situation, I also mean there's a ton of people out there that want you in that situation.
That's so true. And it's everything you said, like check, 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 because I think, like, look at it, even Kamala Harris, right? The sitting VP at the moment. one of the biggest stories that came out while she was running for VP and while she was, when she got elected, was the fact that she dated a married senator, I think his name was. The senator's reputation was known as Slick Rick, right?
Okay.
And he was celebrated for having these relationships with young women. Kamala was vilified for having had a relationship with him. And for me, that is the contrast of humanity. That is the contrast of how we have to move through the world as women versus how men have to move through the world, right? And as you said, there is a reputational, I mean, I'm fortunate in the sense that even though I made these bad decisions, I also understood very much at the time what that would mean for me in the future if I was associated with this or that person, because now there's no evidence. Like any of them could come out and be like, I dated Candace, and I could literally deny it. Then they'd have no physical evidence as to the fact that we dated, right? But I look at it now and I'm like, we look at Bill Clinton. I mean, when I was at this event, it was for the Good Friday Agreement, we were celebrating him for his contribution to, Belfast and what it had done. And it's so interesting that he continues. And I mean, I hold nothing against him. I don't feel like he is the sole perpetrator of this. I feel the media was in his corner. I feel like, he got, but I think he's the symptom of society, right? And so his life moved on with grace and poise, and he still gets celebrated. Hillary stayed with him, everything worked out for him. Monica Lewinsky today still has to speak about, she did a TED talk about shame, right? Like she makes fun of herself, thankfully, but she makes fun of herself when people were like, if you could describe, I saw a tweet of hers where someone said, if we could describe one scandal or thing that marked the 90s, what would it be? And then she tweeted, no comment. And I thought it was really cute.
I mean, and I think you've also laterally mentioned something that we don't realize, which is Hillary. The impact that this also had on Hillary, another woman at the other side of that pyramid, which when she was running for election, the amounts of times that I heard, how could I vote for someone that stayed? And that was actually my sentiment as well, though I would have preferred her 1,000 times to Trump. But in my heart, I just go, I don't want a woman to represent me that stayed with this guy after all of this shit happened, But it's like she's still paying the consequences, right, of having stayed. So she's paying the consequences of her decision to stay with Bill, right? Bill he's doing his thing. He's praised, he's wonderful, whatever. I mean, these two women love me, great. But it's like, how does that make sense? Both of the women have had a complete, pardon line, but a complete shit show as an aftermath. He's swimming free. What?
That statement you just made, just honestly, just rung so true to me, because I remember there was so much backlash when Hillary was running, and it was like, if you can't even, I remember some really awful things, like if you can't keep your partner happy, how are you going to keep the American people happy? If both cheated on you, And so it's so ironic that, we speak about these people out there, but even when it comes down to our own personal lives, when a woman is cheated on, how often it's the woman who's vilified, right? Though it's the woman who people yes, people will feel sorry for her. Yes, people will comfort you, but so many women carry shame around being cheated on, because society will tell you that if you are cheated on, it's because you didn't do your duties. You didn't do something for this individual. Oh, you weren't good enough for this individual who could not keep it in his pants. But he gets, depending on the woman, I mean, for goodness sake, J-Lo is being cheated on by fucking A-Rod. I mean, a man who looks like, as Shannon Lester would like to call it, a boiled sausage, is cheating on one of the most beautiful women in the world. And it's still, who is it on? People are like, well, it's J-Lo. Clearly there's something wrong with her if all her fiancés cheat on her. And I'm like, yes, there is something wrong with her. She keeps choosing cheating scumbags. That's the only thing wrong with her. You know what I'm saying? But it's incredible how society conditions women to believe that when anything with sexuality is involved, you are always the villain, always. Whether you're the one being cheated on, cheated with, it's just, there's no winning. There's no winning.
There's no winning. No, and it begs the question, where is the responsibility to change this lie, right? Which arguably is, we need male allies, We need people in power to shift the discourse, but we also need to stop wearing the coat that doesn't belong to us, right? Stop putting that backpack of rocks and carry it, because at some point we got to set that down and go, so what's the big problem here? It's like, so what's the big issue? Because we also walk through the world like, oh my God, happened, I did that, I'm the worst in the world. And it's kind of like, okay, we're not helping the situation. How many times have we done something that really doesn't merit us to feel like this big, but we do anyways? And that can apply to any area. It can be romantically, it can be in our careers, it can be stupid decisions that we might have made that is less, something stupid, and we feel this big, right? We also need to put the work in to go, I am worth it, I'm enough. I'm reading Michelle Obama's book, Becoming. The amounts of times in her chapter she goes, yes, I'm good enough. And I asked the question, am I good enough? Yes, I'm good. She has said that question at least 4 or 5 times, and I'm not even done the book. She had to touch base with herself about every step that she was doing. This is a problem from every woman around the world, with power, without power, with whatever. So I think it's something that we need to keep decanting.
And as we come to a close with this episode, I think as well, because women struggle with it so much within themselves, I think that's why women also become the harshest judges of the situation, because I find that, yes, men are problematic when it comes to this. Yes, they have their issues. But I found that for me, even when I was dating these guys, I mean, they weren't like exponentially older than I was, but they definitely had more power. I mean, for goodness sake, I was 22, right? And I remember that it wasn't the men that I'd encountered. It wasn't my boyfriend at the time's friends who were like male friends that were terrible to me. It was always the woman who vilified me. They vilified me simply because I was dating a powerful man, not because I stole him or I, broke up a home, nothing. It was simply, how dare you? Why do you have the audacity to date this powerful man when whatever it is that's going on within me cannot find that fulfillment, right? And so I almost feel like as women, as soon as we heal ourselves, we'll stop being such assholes to one another, and we'll become allies instead of assholes.
100%. And as always, this is a topic we can talk about forever, which will continue to ripple across our following conversations. But for now, guys, it's all from us. Let us know in the comments if you've ever had any of these thoughts, if you're a tough judge with yourself, what you think about what's going on in Australia right now. What are your thoughts with the whole relationship between Monica Lewinsky and Bill Clinton and how that was handled by the media? And if you have any ideas as to other topics that you want us to talk about, put them in the comments. Hope you have an awesome week and see you soon. Take care.